This brief video is to help teachers and students of GCSE English Language, particularly the AQA or OCR specifications, to find 19th century non-fiction texts online to aid the teaching of the unseen 19th century non-fiction component of those exams. I'm Dr. Catherine Cholwood. I've previously taught the AQA specification a couple of times, and I'm also a scholar of the 19th century. What this video is going to show you is some websites which actually have free-to-use 19th century non-fiction material, but it's important to point out that this is free to use only with attribution for educational purposes and not for profit. So the reason I'm showing these websites in detail is so that you can make sure you attribute the material. I'm also going to show you a database to help direct you straight to 19th century texts, because some of these websites have millions of resources and you need to know what you're looking for. And finally, I'm going to introduce some pre-made GCSE resources which you may or may not know about. So I'm going to begin with Welsh Newspapers Online, which is an incredible resource created and maintained by the National Library of Wales in Aberystwyth. Here you'll find about 15 million newspaper articles that have been digitised, many of which are from the 19th century. So this is the homepage or search page, and here I'm going to suggest you search English publications only, and you can use this sliding bar to make your search relevant specifically to the 19th century. I'm going to search for royal wedding, and this is then going to bring up all of the relevant results which contain that phrase. You can see down the side that I could look for a particular decade in which certain things were published, or if I knew whose wedding I was looking for, I could look for a particular year. Now, if we look at this copyright button, we can see that the majority of these articles are either in the public domain or they are unknown, and therefore they are free to use with attribution to this website. If we click on the first one here, you can also see that they make the copyright status very clear in the corner. So what's great about this website is that you can also see it in situ, so you can see where the article sits among other reported news. And there are also lots of letters to the editor and transcripts of speeches, so it's not just newspaper articles that you would get from this website. The sister website to Welsh Newspapers is Welsh Journals Online. And now this time the range is much, much greater. So I would suggest that you take the time to limit your results to just those years which are relevant to the 19th century. Again, searching English language only, and then you can put in whatever you want. And again, you will get your results. It's a very similar setup to Welsh Newspapers Online. One of the largest digital libraries on the internet is Hathi Trust Digital Library. And for instance, this happens to have all of the back issues of Punch magazine are on here, as well as lots of copies of the Cornhill magazine, in which Thomas Hardy's Far From the Madding Crowd was first published. So there's an awful lot of information on here. The difficulty is knowing what you're looking for in order to find it, because we are talking millions of items. The same is true of Internet Archive, which is archive.org. Once again, an astonishing amount of material, both on here and on Hathi Trust, has been digitised by American libraries, American university libraries, and indeed Google. Now, I happen to know that this has Shavas's Advice to Mothers, which is one of those sort of great 19th century handbooks. So I could, pop that in there and I would find all the different editions that have been digitised on here. I could click on one, and then through Internet Archive, I would have access to the entire book. And therefore, I could look for an extract on a particular topic, or I could simply show my students, this is how it was originally published. This is what 19th century readers were looking at. Now, the difficulty with Internet Archive and Hathi Trust is, how do you know what's there? How do you know what you're looking for? And this is why I want to show you a database. So this is the Diseases of Modern Life Primary and Secondary Sources database. Now, Diseases of Modern Life was a European Research Council funded project at the University of Oxford, and it ended last year in 2019. As part of the research, we created a database, and this is actually freely available on the internet. So while it says it's for researchers, there's absolutely no reason why you as teachers couldn't also use it. Now, there are ways to use it. You can download it or you can use it online. And my wonderful colleague, Dr. Hannah Wills, created the notes so that it's incredibly clear how to use it. But if you just clicked here to access it online, you would be taken to this online Zotero library. Now, the full database has just over 3,000 items in it, and they're organised into different thematic categories, which were the topics that the research project was looking at. However, you'll see at the bottom here, we've got a category called Free Online. If you click that, you are immediately taken to the list of 557 items which are directly linked to the free online version of that resource. So for instance, you can see that A Little Chat About Tea, out of which I made one of the PDFs on this website, is found here, and you could click directly on that URL and be taken to, as it happens, Hathi Trust. But this time you would get straight to the resource itself because you're going via direct link. So if you don't know about the Diseases of Modern Life database, that can be incredibly useful. Although it is worth pointing out that it is limited to those topics relevant to the research project. So things at the intersection of literary, medical and scientific culture. However, you could use that to get a flavour of where material is, and then, once you're in, say, this issue of the Leisure Hour magazine, you could dip around and see sort of what else is there that you might like to use. Finally then, I want to look at some resources that are already created. So, as part of my work on the Diseases project, we created some GCSE specific resources, which are freely downloadable from this website. So all of these, again, are based on the topics of the research from Diseases of Modern Life. So we've got things about, the preservation of health, about fatigue, about how shop assistants were treated and how that made a difference to their health conditions. And these are created to be replicating the AQA exam. So if you don't already know about those, that's another, about 20 or so resources that you could have a look at. And finally, I want to introduce you to the Hardy and Heritage project, which is from the University of Exeter. And this was mainly developed by Professor Angelique Richardson and Dr. Helen Angier. This gives you resources for 19th and 20th century non-fiction. And there's a wonderful online study resource which is freely available to all, which also includes a teaching pack and indeed lesson plans. Some of them are related also to A-level teaching, and they have also very helpfully linked you to ways in which you could use this if your exam board is Edexcel. So this is split into 3 thematic categories: Victorian pets, empire and animals, and Hardy and friends. And so it's a really rich resource, which if you don't know about, I highly recommend to you. Finally, it's worth saying that this project has more recently been looking at the letters written to Thomas Hardy. So this is another wonderful resource if you are looking for non-fiction letters, that other genre, to help your students try out their skills on letters. So I hope this has been helpful.